I think we'll start. It's a little past 2 o'clock. I want to wish a good afternoon and good evening, perhaps, to some of our friends and colleagues in Europe. My name is Daniel Sally. I'm a professor in the Department of Political Science at the School of Community and Public Affairs at Concordia University. And I will be moderating this event, which is the launch, the global Zoom launch of the book titled The Forgotten Revolution, the 1919 Hungarian Republic of Councils, edited by our colleague, András Göllner. So thank you everyone for joining us in this event. Basically, what will happen is that we will have about an hour. In the first half hour, there's a number of people that will be speaking, namely, of course, András Göllner. And after that, we'll have about half an hour Q&A, where people will be allowed to ask questions to the authors, the contributors of the book, and of course to the editor of the book as well. If you can write your questions in the chat box, and I will be reading the questions to our panelists. If you are, of course, interested in getting this book, the book can be accessed by Googling Black Rose Book website or the website of the University of Chicago Press. There's a number also of online venues in Budapest. If you're interested in getting this book, it is being distributed by the largest English language bookstore called Bestsellers Books. This event is hosted by Concordia University's Karl Polanyi Institute, and of course by the publisher Black Rose Books and the University of Chicago Press. I will ask them actually right now to speak. Dr. Margie Mendel, the director of the Karl Polanyi Institute, to say a few words on behalf of the Institute. And after that, I will invite Mr. Dimitri Rousopoulos, the publisher of Black Rose Book, to say a few words as well. So Margie, you want to say a few words, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. It's really a pleasure for me to be here and to co-host this event with my friend Dimitri Rousopoulos, and congratulations to Black Rose Books for this extraordinary publication. It's an honor for the Institute, for the Karl Polanyi Institute, to host this book launch, and the reasons for this are too many to mention. So I will mention a few that are impossible to exclude. The 1918-1919 revolutions in Hungary that culminated in the Republic of Councils on March 21st, 1919, cannot be discussed without reference to the woman who ignited its fuse in 1917, Ilona Duchynska, the wife of Karl Polanyi. The Karl Polanyi Institute of Montreal, which is at Concordia University, is the custodian of Ilona Duchynska's and Karl Polanyi's papers, is extremely proud to be part of this book that is dedicated to the memory and celebration of Ilona Duchynska, and which contains the writings of so many of those who are active members of our institute and the various sister institutes and Polanyi centers in Hungary and elsewhere that are dedicated to upholding and advancing the intellectual legacy of Ilona Duchynska and Karl Polanyi. Our own affiliation and collaboration with this publication goes back to its inception, and seeing its successful completion is really an added pleasure. We opened our archives to scholars who contributed chapters to this book, and we collaborated closely with András Göllner, the book's editor and one of its contributors, and of course with Black Rose Books, who have published many of our own earlier manuscripts drawn upon a variety of Polanyi events over many years at Concordia University. We hosted, among other events, the initial colloquium that led to this book at Concordia University in April 1919, where the foundations of this important enterprise were laid, and then expanded the collaboration with Hungarian Polanyi Center in Budapest, with the journal Eszmélet and others, to further discussion on the book's progress. I am extremely pleased and proud to be associated with this truly international scholarly collaboration that has received such excellent early reviews, and to be welcoming you to what promises to be an inspiring global discussion. Welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Now I would like Dimitri to say a few words on behalf of Black Rose Books.
Yes.
Dimitri.
Listen, it's a pleasure for me to co-host this event with Margaret Mandel because we know each other for many, many years, and we've collaborated on all sorts of innovative initiatives. But I also want to acknowledge with great pleasure that right besides Margaret Mandel is the remarkable Carrie Polanyi-Levitt. A big kiss to you, Carrie.
Thank you.
I just want to say three things, essentially. One, the date of this book launch is significant because it is the 174th anniversary of Hungary, of the participation of Hungarians at the grassroots level to the European-wide uprising of 1848. So it is not a date that was chosen arbitrarily. It is significant because that rebellion, as we all know, was a rebellion against tyranny and oppression. And this new book simply makes the connection between 1848 and, of course, 1919, and significantly, and we should never forget that, 1956. Now, one word about Black Rose Books. We make it part of our program to throw new and fresh light on these uprisings, be it 1917 and what really happened there, be it 1921 in the new Soviet Republic, where there was a first rebellion against the Bolshevik concentration of power, be it 1936 and what happened and did not happen in Spain. So this is part of a programmatic perspective. And I must say, I had great pleasure in interacting with András Göllner, who at an informal book launch, we generated this very interesting project of bringing focus on 1919 in Hungary. And I have to say a great thank you to András and his collaborators, because he worked with them very, very hard indeed. It was a very complicated project. And for those of us who have experience with anthologies, it is even more complicated to work on an anthology than on a single authored book. But there it is, and it is to be celebrated. And I would like to thank all of us for being here and all of us for collaborating and making this book memorable so that this event will not be forgotten. In fact, it is refreshing to read every single essay. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dimitri. I would like now to ask András Göllner to present the book, to introduce the book. This book I remember that was 3 years ago, I believe, in the Department of Political Science, where András had organized this conference. And the book on the Hungarian Republic of Council, 1919, the Hungarian Republic of Councils. And this book is the result of course, this conference and the discussions and papers that were presented at this conference, and also many other papers, I believe. So, András, I'm very happy to introduce you, a longtime colleague, longtime friend, who is the editor of this book. He also wrote the preface, co-authored the introduction with Raquel Varela, and added 2 chapters of his own in this book. So András will be speaking for a few minutes and also interact with some of his collaborators to the book, and then after that we'll move to the Q&A. András.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Danielle, and allow me to begin by saying how pleased I am to see so many of you. and especially how pleased I am to see many of those smiling faces that I haven't seen in Budapest since I left Hungary 12 years ago. I'm delighted to see so many of you, and I embrace you all on this special day, which is so important to Hungarians, the 174th anniversary of our glorious 1848 rebellion against oppression, the first link in the chain of resistance that goes through 1918, 1919 to 1956, and is testing once again right now as we speak the resolve of the lives of those who matter to us so much. So I would like to begin by thanking very briefly the two people who had the most important influence on this book becoming a reality. One of them is Ilona Duchinska herself, the wife of Karl Polanyi, who's the one who opened my eyes to the true story of 1919, way back when I was a young graduate student in the mid-1970s. The other person is more contemporary, and it's Dimitrios Rousopoulos, who's sitting with us right here. And he's the one who stopped me from being a stargazer and instructed me to head out and guide the spaceship to that burning hot red star over Europe in 1919, which exploded with such luminosity that it scared the daylight out of the great powers in Versailles, who were redrawing the map of the world at that time. I'm grateful to him for not only providing the spaceship to us, but enabling me to become the captain of the crew, the 5 men, 5 women, and Dimitri himself, who joined us to go to the Republic of Councils, this red dwarf, as I prefer to call it, which shone with, as I said, such great luminosity, and which was the focus of attention of our work. Now, I'd like to talk about the book. I have about 3 or 4 minutes to do so, what its mission was and what its accomplishments are, before I ask members of my companions, the members of the ensemble who came with me, to say a few words themselves. So the mission was quite simple. It was to tell the truth, and it was to restore the stolen dignity of the millions of working men and women who put their lives on the line in 1919, so that they and their brothers and sisters around the world could live in freedom, could live in dignity, and could find the path that leads them to justice, to constitutionally guaranteed equal rights, and to ecologically sustainable communal well-being. We had a more surgical mission as well, if I can put it, if I can use those words. The surgical mission was to remove a malignant tumor that has been implanted in the minds of working men and women for over 100 years, probably well before that. But certainly in this case, we're talking about the Republic of Councils, a malignant tumor that compelled not only working men and women, but the citizens of Hungary and anybody who looked upon those events as the act of a small group of men, Moscow-trained Bolshevik Jews, led by Béla Kun, who had nothing on their minds but to destroy the Christian national identity of Hungarians. This is a fraudulent, a malignant tumor that festers to this very day. And our job was to remove it, pulverize it. And I think we have succeeded in doing that. Thirdly, I think our mission was to remove, or to help to remove, the knee from the throats of working men and women by the yacht owners, by the fortune hunters, who are determined and have been determined for centuries to destroy the ability of working men and women to distinguish illusion from reality, truth from falsehood, right from wrong, and to prevent them from traveling a path that leads to righteousness and leads to communal well-being. Now, I would like to say just a couple of words about my own agenda with this book, which I wasn't secretive about. It goes from the very beginning through the introductory chapter that I co-wrote with my dear colleague Raquel, who cannot be with us today because she's in motion traveling. But an agenda which I spell out very clearly in the final chapter of this book, which I entitled The Unfinished Rhapsody, the Counter-Revolutionary Rhapsody, the Fallout from 1990. My agenda with this book is a call to action, very much in the spirit of Ilona Duchinska, who was frustrated and unhappy with the passivity of academia that spent its time theorizing rather than going down into the underpass, where the down and out, the downtrodden, the stamped upon, the abused, the ill-informed proletariat live. She took the lead in going down to the factories of Chepel to spread the word and to help organize them into a fighting army. So my agenda was a call to action, indeed a call to arms of the kind that's on the cover of our book, a call to intellectual rebellion, to remove the fortune hunter's knees from the necks of working men and women, from stopping them from destroying the ability of citizens, not only in Hungary, but all around the world, from recognizing the path that leads to justice, that leads to constitutionally guaranteed equal rights, that leads to ecologically sustainable communal well-being. This is what we've all been dreaming of. This is what workers have been dreaming of for all their lives until their minds were infected with that cancer I have spoken of earlier. This was the real mission of our book, and I hope we have accomplished that. Now, I'm going to stop speaking, and I'm going to ask some of our contributors, some of my mates, some of my fellow academics to join me on this mission to say a few words. And I'm going to ask Peter Chunderlich to start, if I may, to say just a few words about the background to this explosion, the forces that blew the lid off Hungary's Chernobyl in 1919 and made this a truly social revolution rather than a little coup d'etat by a bunch of anti-Christian Jews, as we are told. Peter, it's yours.
I would like to greet everyone. Let me introduce myself briefly. I am Péter Chunderlich, Assistant Professor of the Eötvös Loránd University, Budapest, and Research Fellow at the Institute of Political History. My first academic book was written about the Galileo Circle, in which Karl Polanyi and Ilona Duchinska played the main role. And my second academic book, published in 2019, was about the memory of the Hungarian Soviet Republic during the Horthy era. My study is against the right-wing interpretations of the Hungarian Soviet Republic. These right-wing interpretations were generated during the Horthy era in the counter-revolutionary period, and these stories interpreted the Hungarian Soviet Republic as a coup by alien communist agents. And these storytellers, these right-wing and anti-Semitic storytellers, like Cecil Tormai, the author of the Outlaw Diary, Buldozsókönyv in Hungarian, stated that the Hungarian Soviet Republic did not have any roots in the Hungarian history. And it is a sad story that these right-wing interpretations were galvanized 12 years ago in the Orbán regime, in the contemporary Hungary. And like in the Horthy era, in nowadays Hungary, these right-wing interpretations about the Hungarian Soviet Republic played a propagandistic role, because these interpretations try to discredit the left, the Hungarian left. These interpretations and these authors state that the Hungarian Soviet Republic was absolutely a communist plot in the frame of the Jewish Bolshevik word plot, word conspiracy. And in my study, I tried to give an other view of the Hungarian Soviet Republic, of the antecedents of the Hungarian Soviet Republic, capitalizing of many Hungarian scholars, many Hungarian experts of this topic, like Tibor Hajdu. And I pointed out that the Hungarian Soviet Republic had roots in Hungarian history, and I summarize the political events after the World War which lead to the proclamation of the dictatorship of the proletariat. And I pointed out that this dictatorship was very popular in the first weeks of the Hungarian Soviet Republic, because it seems to be the last hope to save the Greater Hungary in the Hungarian right as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Now, I'm not sure whether Susan Zimmerman is here. My eyesight is not very good here. Susan, are you with us from Vienna? Can we see her?
I don't see her in the list of participants, Andy.
Okay, all right. Well, then next, I'm going to ask perhaps our dear friend Carrie, who is certainly with us, and who has written a wonderful piece on the comparison between Vienna and Budapest, to say a few words to us about her contribution. Carrie, it's yours.
Thank you. I am very happy to be here at the launch of this wonderful book. And I like the book for all the reasons that are being explained to us, but also because of the beautiful dedication to the memory of my mother, written by Andy Göllner, who knew her quite well. They became good friends in later years. So I value very much the dedication to the memory of my mother and to her spirit, of freedom in the sense of community in pursuing a common objective. And that is what happened in 1919. Actually, I have heard it said that Ilona Dutschenska lit the fuse of two revolutions, that of 1918 which put an end to the war, and as of 1919, which installed the Republic of Councils or Soviets. As a very young woman of 19 years old, she brought the Zimbabwe Declaration, which is named after a village in Switzerland where there was a meeting of labor people from Britain and Germany and other countries who were opposed to the First World War, as distinct from the German Social Democrats who supported it. And she first took this declaration, the declaration of war on war. She took it to Vienna. And there she got a very cool reception where leading representatives of the working class movement, men and women, told her, go home, child, just go home. They considered she was too young to know what she was doing. So she did go home, she did not. She thought she would now take this declaration to Hungary, where she had family and many contacts. And she took it to her mentor, Erwin Sabo, who was the chief librarian of the city library of Budapest. And he was a kind of anarchist syndicalist who had befriended many of the shop stewards in the major arms factory, the Weiss Manfred factory.
Gary, my dear, can I just interrupt you for 1 second, my dear?
Yes.
Because we need to move on and the time is very short. So could I ask you to just briefly wrap up because we need to move on? I'm so sorry, my dear. Okay?
Okay. I think that was a necessary intervention. So before I leave this subject, I would like to talk about my contribution to the book, which is under the heading of A Tale of Two Cities, Budapest and Vienna, because Budapest was under attack from the Entente, from the Western powers, who had encouraged the Romanian and Czech armies to invade Hungary in order to capture Budapest and throw out the government of the councils. And she made a passionate appeal for assistance, armed assistance, to defend Budapest, including an appeal to the workers of Vienna. And the request was met by many individuals who did go there to help the fight. But the party representing them, the Social Democratic Party.
Gary, we have about 15 seconds, my dear, left. 15 seconds. It's really, time is clicking and that's all we have now. 15 seconds, okay?
Well, I want to explain the reasons why they refused to send arms that had been stored in the have been stored.
Carrie, can we just put that off perhaps for a little bit later, because we're going to run out of time and we're according to a fixed schedule. So we'll come back to that, okay?
Okay.
Because right now we have to move on. Thank you. Okay, so I think we're heading into we're cutting into the question and answer period, and we really would like to give the audience a chance to say a few words and comment on the work that we have done. I'm sorry that we don't have much time or any further time for
let Daniel take over. Let Daniel take over.
Other authors, and so that's what I'm trying to say is I'd like to give the microphone back to Daniel Saleh so that he can handle the question and answer period, and we can give the audience a chance to say what they would like to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, András.
Okay.
Yes, so we have about half an hour ahead of us for a question and answer. You're welcome to write down your questions in the chat, or if you want, you can also raise your hand, but I'm not seeing everyone, so I would certainly encourage you to use the little hand sign, which you can get into the reaction function. So yes. Do I see any hand up? Yes. Nadia Alexan. I'm going to be very shrewd here and ask you to keep your questions very short. As you know, we don't have much time, and go to the point. Have a question, not necessarily a comment, but a question. So Nadia Alexan, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if my micro is off or on.
No, we hear you. We hear you.
Oh, okay. So I just want to know why it is that Hungary now has become so neoliberal and so conservative after this long struggle.
Good question. You want to try to answer that question right away, András?
Well, I think I'd rather listen to some questions before reacting. I think let's hear more questions.
At the moment, that's the only question we have, András.
Sorry?
At the moment, it's the only question we have, so.
All right, well.
Okay, no, I see another one. So Jason Prince. Jason, you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. András, you gave us a beautiful metaphor at the beginning about how this moment in 1919 sparked across Europe. Could you give us a little story about how and where those effects were felt across Europe? Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Okay.
Another one, maybe? So we have two questions, one from Nadia Alexan and one from Jason Prince. András, you wanna please?
Well, I'm happy to. Yes, of course. Yeah. I'm happy to answer, and I will answer very briefly because I don't want to monopolize the time. The question from Nadia being, how come Hungary has become neoliberal? The answer is, how come the world has become neoliberal? It's a national progression out of liberalism. As we have learned from Karl Polanyi, the procession from liberalism is through neoliberalism into fascism. That's what we are seeing, and Hungary is a rather, how should we say, a pronounced but not unique flight path that Hungary was on after 1990, along with all of the republics that fell out from the Soviet Empire. Many of these neoliberal republics became so at the behest or through the political linguistics of American campaign advisors like Arthur Finkelstein and Paul Manafort. The entire former Soviet Empire is led by leaders who have been fed the political strategies that culminated in that other neoliberal authoritarian Donald Trump gaining access to the White House. So that's how come. As far as Jason's question of examples around Europe, the interesting thing about Hungary is that it's the odd case. It infuriated everybody, not only the capitalists, the victorious imperialist powers, but the social democrats in Germany, as much as the Austrians, as much as Lenin himself. Hungary is a unique model. The Hungarian Revolution was council socialism, in which the Communist Party, which was a minority of the political party that participated in that revolution, even the Communist Party recognized the supremacy, the executive, legislative, and judicial supremacy of the councils. The supreme executive legislative organ of the Republic of Councils was the National Congress of Councils, and its executive, the Revolutionary Governing Council. This was a threat to everyone. This was a threat to the Social Democrats in Vienna, a threat to the Social Democrats in Berlin, who orchestrated the assassination of Rosa Luxemburg, and it was a threat to Lenin, who was a staunch believer in the right of the Bolshevik Party to play the leading role, the vanguard role on the path to socialism. Béla Kun lied his way throughout the tenure of the Hungarian Republic of Councils through his telegrams to Lenin, telling him the first day of the revolution that there are no workers' councils in Hungary, and that he is in control of the Social Democrats, they're putty in his hand, where in fact the situation was exactly the reverse. Out of the 13 ministerial posts of the Republic of Councils, only one was designated to the communists, the foreign relations post to Béla Kun, because the Hungarians expected the Russian Red Army to come to their aid, which it didn't. And part of the reason why it didn't is because Lenin and Trotsky were very suspicious of what was going on in Budapest. So basically, that's in a nutshell what I can say to you, Jason. Any other questions?
Yeah, András, I have actually quite a few questions. I have a question here from Andrew Lewis. How does today's events in the region relate to what happened in 1919? We have another question from Chris Millett. Are there a couple of main takeaways from the Republic of Councils that can be used as a model for like-minded movements today, which appears to be to lack such models, actually? And another one from, we'll take another one from Martino Camelli. Does mainstream historiography in Hungary read the Hungarian Social Republic? Is there a survey about the knowledge of those events by contemporary average Hungarian? And I will ask Francisco Pisano Barnes to who raised his hand to perhaps ask his question very quickly. Francisco.
Thanks. Thank you. I'm more in. It's very related to what was just being said, but I'm very interested in the long cycle, which might reveal some resilience or predispositions that are common to Hungary, Spain, and Ukraine. The workers' councils in Ukraine 56 have been an inspiration for socialists in this country, in Spain, and I assume around the world. We have a common thread between the insurgency of the fascists in Spain and the resistance, and the role of people like Durruti, who were friends with Markov and Dascona, anarchist leaders in Spain. They were very, Markov was in Barcelona for a while. They had met before in Barcelona, and this, in Paris, sorry, both Dascona, who was from Aragon, and Durruti, and Markov, from Ukraine. Ukraine and Spain are probably the biggest collectivist experiences in the last century in Europe. So my question is the resistance that has surprised the world in Ukraine, popular resistance to Russia, the Russian army, is this resilience related to the fact that in Spain also there was 3-year resistance with very little arms and with the non-intervention pact and the betrayal of Western democracies to the Spanish Republic? Is this resistance to do anything to do with this long-term ideological traditions?
Thank you. András, or would you like maybe one of your colleagues, Peter Chundelik, to answer the question? I think
Yes,
Peter was
Peter.
still with Peter. Go ahead, Peter. Yeah.
Or perhaps Christopher Adam, who's here with us, he might have a kick at the can as well.
We'll
Or
go with
anybody
Peter
else.
first. We'll go with Peter first. Peter.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I would like to answer the question of Martino Comali about the opinions in the contemporary Hungarian historiography about the Hungarian Soviet Republic. We have to separate the opinions of the propagandists of the Orbán government, the right-wing journalists, who represent who are representing the right-wing and anti-Semitic interpretations of the Hungarian Soviet Republic. They state that it was a coup of communist agents without any roots. But there are excellent Hungarian historians who give a professional opinion about the dictatorship of the proletariat. For instance, Peter Apor, who published an excellent book about the memory of the Hungarian Soviet Republic during the Rákosi and the Kádár era, or Gergely Romsics, who recently published a book about the foreign policy of the post-World War revolutions. So I can name several Hungarian historians who are in the history of the Hungarian Soviet Republic, and their opinions are that the Hungarian Soviet Republic was the product of the post-World War collapse, when the loss of the First World War eliminated the traditional Hungarian political elite and created a political vacuum. And the actors of the Hungarian labor movement who had been oppressed during the dualism in the Austro-Hungarian monarchy could enter in this vacuum and could get the power.
Thank you. Christopher Adam, would you like to add something to this or to some of the questions that have been asked? I understand you're a collaborator of the book. Pardon? Christopher? I guess not. He's muted. Okay, so I'll go back to you, András. You want to add to what Peter said?
Well, maybe somebody from the audience would like to answer from Hungary. Attila Pope is an eminent historian who's with us. Peter Pastor is another eminent historian that I see. Perhaps Peter would like to say something. Or Attila, either of them, in response.
Attila, okay.
So once you ask me, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I'm Attila Pok speaking. So once I have been asked, so in my opinion, the Republic of Councils offered one of the possible options for Hungary after the First World War. It was a failed option, but it was an option. As Peter has just explained, there was a kind of a power vacuum in the aftermath of the First World War. there was a first attempt at dealing with this power vacuum with Mihály Károly's revolution, and which for a number of reasons collapsed. And then other option was the Republic of Councils. So in my opinion, it is a very important part of Hungarian history. In Hungarian history, there have been a number of critical situations and various options were opening up. And for historians, this is a very important topic to study the limits and possibilities of making decisions at a critical time. Of course, the beginning of the period of the Council of Republic is very different from the later part. So the popularity as a result of measures taken by the leaders of the Council of Republic without taking into account Hungarian traditions and the state of the society led to the total loss of popularity. But still, I think it was an option that makes us ponder about what a society can do in a crisis situation. That's it.
Thank you. I think I'd like to go back to a question that was not quite answered, but posed by Chris Millett. Are there a couple of main takeaways from the Republic of Councils that can be used as a model? András.
Yes, I think that was a very important question, and if I may, I'll respond very, very briefly. I think the takeaway from this book is that the 1919 Republic of Councils was not the failure of socialism, but the failure of capitalism. And that these events, such as the one in Hungary, has happened not only there, but in hundreds of places in the past. And I'm not going to get into a long list now. You can find that in chapter 1, in the introduction of our book. What it shows is that capitalism is pre-programmed almost, if you will. It's in its DNA to produce recurring crises in which millions, hundreds of millions of people's lives are threatened. We're seeing it right now. We're on the cusp of another catastrophe that's happening in the Ukraine. And once again, it's led by the yacht owners, the fortune hunters. It's not a coincidence that Vladimir Putin is the richest man in Russia, that Viktor Orban is the richest man in Hungary, that in many of the places where working men are struggling are ruled by rich, super rich money grubbers. So the takeaway is that there's no time to waste. There's no time for theorizing. We have to get down and link arms with those who are oppressed and think about action, creative and positive action, to ensure that more and more people recognize this horrendous misinformation, this horrendous intervention through cyber technologies that have by now turned 100 million American working men and women rabid followers of that artificially blonde bomber who occupied the White House for 4 years and is getting ready to go back in there in a few more years. And God knows what he will do in terms of encouraging the fortune hunters of the world who are producing the kind of gruesome, disgusting, horrendous crimes that we see in the Ukraine now. So the takeaway is that academia, please get out into the streets, get out of the ivory towers, do like Ilona Duchinska, take up arms. And I'm not talking about guns and bullets, but flex your muscles and speak the language of the oppressed. Go down and find out what their problems are and lend them a helping hand. That's the takeaway of this book.
Thank you, András. Dimitri, I see you raised your hand.
Yes, I would add to what András just gave insight into, and I would like us to recall the comments that Francesco Barnes from Madrid made as to what he thought was an important takeaway. For me, the most important contribution of this book is not simply a denunciation of an articulation and an analysis of the enemy. The question that is posed at the center of this book, and it's part of the subtitle, Republic of the Councils. Why did we call it that? Why did we add that? Well, because the nature of the resistance, the nature of the uprising was extraordinary. It was from the bottom up. They tried to create not only a parallel government, but they tried to replace the traditional state powers that come before, during, and after classical revolution. Okay, so when Francesco makes reference to important events that took place subsequently in Spain, he's not smoking a pipe. He is actually drawing very concrete lines from what happened in Hungary in 1919, and subsequently what also happened in other places of the world. And before 1919, I should say that in 1917 to 1920, there was in Ukraine an extraordinary movement, another grassroots movement, which defeated the White Army on the one hand and was crushed from the back by the Red Army led by Leon Trotsky. So these are very important examples of how resistance has to be organized, and not simply in a prima facie kind of way to say, well, the enemy is such and such and such. The question is how to resist, how to build a democratic mass movement that can actually transform society or attempt to transform society in a new way. And that's what people are looking for.
Thank you, Dimitri. I have a request from Oliver Botar that we should really actually answer the question from Andrew Lewis, which I will repeat. How does today's events in the region relate to what happened in 1919? András, you want to address that?
Well, I thought I addressed it in the sense that it relates in two ways. One is that the resistance is in Ukraine, the resistance against the fortune hunters that are coming in to seize the property and the mineral riches and the territory and the wealth of the people of Ukraine. Fortune hunters. I mean, if you listen to American broadcasts, you listen to Tucker Carlson on Fox News, every evening he's pontificating about how Ukraine is the poorest country in the world, and why do we bother with this situation that is just going to raise oil prices in America. And he completely misleads American public opinion about the fact that Ukraine is a vastly rich country in the mineral resources that Russia lacks. Russia is a one horse pony, or whatever is the expression. I can't remember it right now, my apologies. But its wealth is oil and gas. Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world. Ukraine has incredible mineral riches that are needed for the new semiconductors, the new batteries, electronic batteries, and so on and so forth. And the fortune hunters in Russia want it. The yacht owners want that. So it relates to how the people at the bottom, the ordinary Ukrainian citizens, led by their leader Zelensky, are resisting that grab, that power grab. Right now, Ukraine is about survival. It's not about building from the ground up, from the grassroots, as in Hungary in 1919, through councils and allowing working men and women to control their fate. But it certainly is a struggle against the fortune hunters. And so that way, there's a relationship.
Thank you, Andrew. We have very little time left. I see Francisco Bozano Barnes has his hands up again, and Nadia as well. So Francisco, very quickly.
No, I just didn't put it down.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you had another question. Nadia, very quickly, please.
Yes, I want to come back to what Dimitri said, organizing from the bottom up. But the problem is that the media is in the hands of the oligarchs. So even the syndicated, unionized workers are listening to one side of the story and they're unaware of the other side. And you have in Quebec now, l'Institut économique de Montréal is talking about privatizing, more privatization of healthcare. It's already privatized at 35%, and they want more privatization. So how do you actually do what you just said?
András, quickly.
Well, the answer is not privatization, obviously. I mean, the privatization of higher education in Hungary is leading to this situation where working men and women have the children of working men and women have no access. Privatization of the media means that working men and women are continuously fed mythologies, fairy tales about reality.
That's what I'm saying. But how do you counter that? That's
so
what
when you counter it, if you get down, you organize your own free media and counterforce the lies. It's a struggle. It's a struggle by people on the left and people on the center, wherever they are, to make sure that the message gets out, that the socialization, the information revolution that is so damaging to working men and women is not going to be monopolized by the private ownerships of information dissemination. There are alternative routes. One of the very interesting things about this new technology is that information, or the marginal cost of information, which is the most important factor in further economic development, is information, and it is absolutely free. You can get it off the internet for zero. The marginal cost of information is zero, and we should all go for it.
Thank you, András. We'll probably leave Dimitri room for the last word because we're coming to the end of our time together. So, well, Dimitri, last word.
Thank you, Danielle, and thank you, Nadia. I mean, Nadia, you know the answer to your question. For years, you worked assiduously to create an important forum in Montreal where citizens could get together and to discuss important issues.
Absolutely.
Okay? That was a remarkable achievement for which, as far as I'm concerned, you have not gotten enough recognition. We have the Karl Polanyi Institute that also organizes public events that people can flock to and listen to and exchange ideas. I myself personally, for the last 50 years of my life, have been trying to open the can of public dissent and get people in various neighborhoods in this city and other cities across Canada and in Europe to take up political arms to resist what's going on. So it's constantly stoking the fire, while at the same time, by the way, and here is where I end, we criticize the mainstream media. I mean, in my publishing work, as you know, I've published some of the most important critics of the media, the mainstream media. So on the one hand, you do that, but on the other hand, you do what you and I and others are constantly doing because we never know what people are actually ready to go, okay? I mean, these things happen in an incredible way. I could give you so many examples, and I'm sure other people attending this event will give you many, many examples. And all of a sudden, there's a surge of people who want to say enough is enough. We're going to move forward. And that is our hope.
Thank you.
And I think we'll leave it on that note. Thank you very much, Dimitri. Thank you very much, everyone who has attended this event. Thank you, of course. I would be remiss if I did not thank Ana Gomez of the Karl Polanyi Institute, who has helped to organize the event. And I would like certainly to remind you to go out and get the book and continue the discussion, spread the word, and of course, help the people whose lives matter. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here, and have a good end of the day. Good afternoon, good evening. And yes, that's it. Goodbye.